Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off our presentation today. Our topic is synonyms, and this is the very first slide. Today, we'll explore what synonyms are and why they're important. We'll look at different examples and learn how to use them effectively. Let's get started and make this an engaging and informative session. Let's take a closer look at the contents of this presentation. First, we have understanding synonyms. Here, we'll explore what synonyms are and why they matter in our language. Next, we move on to lists of synonyms, which will help us see how words with similar meanings are grouped and used in different contexts. Finally, there's antonyms, the words that have opposite meanings, which are just as important for developing a well-rounded vocabulary. Connecting these points to the overall theme, our goal is to improve communication skills by understanding how words relate to each other, whether through similarity or opposition. This foundation will help us use language more precisely and effectively. Understanding synonyms is a fundamental part of mastering language. When we talk about synonyms, we're referring to words that have similar meanings but might be used in different contexts or with slightly different connotations. Recognizing these nuances helps us communicate more precisely and effectively. It's also important to understand that synonyms are not always interchangeable in every situation, so knowing the subtle differences is key. This concept ties into the overall theme of expanding our vocabulary and improving our language skills, which ultimately makes our speaking and writing more versatile and engaging. Let's start by looking at what synonyms are. Synonyms are words that have the same or very similar meanings. When two words are synonyms, we say they are synonymous. The term synonymy describes the state of being a synonym. The word itself comes from ancient Greek, syn meaning with and onoma meaning name. This origin highlights how synonyms are essentially different names for the same or similar ideas. It's also important to note that synonyms can belong to any part of speech, whether nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, or prepositions, as long as both words are of the same part of speech. This flexibility allows us to find synonyms across all types of words we use in language, which really enriches our vocabulary and helps us express ourselves more precisely. Understanding these core concepts about synonyms will be fundamental as we explore their role in language and communication throughout this presentation. Let's look at some examples of synonyms to understand how words can have similar meanings, but might be used in different contexts. First, we have the verb category. For example, buy and purchase both mean to acquire something, but purchase often sounds a bit more formal or businesslike. Next, in the adverb category, quickly and speedily both describe doing something in a short amount of time, but speedily can sound a little more formal or old-fashioned. Moving on to adjectives, big and large both describe size, and they can usually be used interchangeably, though sometimes one might fit better depending on the context. Finally, for prepositions, on and upon both indicate position or surface contact, with upon tending to be more formal or poetic. Recognizing these synonyms helps us choose the right word for the right situation, which is key to effective communication. Let's take a moment to look at an important note about synonyms. It's crucial to understand that synonyms are not always universally interchangeable. They are defined with respect to specific senses or contexts of words. For example, the word pupil and student are often considered synonyms, but only in certain contexts where they refer to someone learning. However, pupil can also mean the part of the eye, which is a completely different sense. Similarly, take the word expired. If I say he expired, that means he died. But if I say my passport has expired, it doesn't mean the passport has died. It simply means it is no longer valid or active. This highlights a key point. Not all synonyms can be used interchangeably in every situation. The meaning depends on the context or sense in which the word is used. Recognizing this is vital for accurate communication and understanding in language processing, which ties back into our overall focus on semantics and context. Let's take a closer look at lists of synonyms. This slide emphasizes the importance of understanding different words that have similar meanings. Recognizing synonyms allows us to communicate more effectively and add variety to our language. When we expand our vocabulary with synonyms, we can choose the most precise words for each situation, which enhances clarity and engagement. Throughout this presentation, we've been discussing the power of language and how it shapes our message. Using synonyms thoughtfully connects to that theme because it helps us be more intentional and nuanced in our communication. So, mastering lists of synonyms is a valuable skill that supports clearer, more dynamic expressions. Let's take a closer look at how words with similar meanings can be grouped together to help us understand nuance and context. For example, the word beautiful can be expanded to include synonyms like attractive, pretty, lovely, and stunning. Each of these words has a slightly different shade of meaning, but generally conveys something visually appealing. Recognizing these nuances can help us communicate more precisely. Moving on, consider the word hardworking. Its synonyms, diligent, determined, industrious, and enterprising, highlight different aspects of effort and persistence. Diligent emphasizes carefulness, while determined points to perseverance, industrious focuses on productivity, and enterprising suggests initiative. Understanding these differences can enrich our language and make our descriptions more accurate. Next, let's look at the word fair. Synonyms like just, objective, impartial, and unbiased all relate to justice and neutrality, but each has its subtle emphasis. For instance, just emphasizes moral correctness, while objective and impartial focus on neutrality and lack of bias. Recognizing these distinctions helps us communicate fairness more effectively. For kind, the slide lists honest, thoughtful, considerate, amiable, and gracious. Each adds a layer to the concept of kindness. Honest relates to truthfulness, thoughtful and considerate show empathy, amiable indicates friendliness, and gracious combines politeness with warmth. When describing someone, choosing the right word can better capture their true nature. Similarly, honorable is paired with fair, sincere, and trustworthy. These words all relate to integrity, but from different angles. Honorable involves moral standing, sincere emphasizes genuineness, and trustworthy highlights reliability. When we consider funny, synonyms like humorous, comical, hilarious, and hysterical show varying degrees of amusement. Humorous might be light, while hilarious and hysterical suggest stronger reactions. Recognizing these differences helps us match our words to the situation. For intelligent, the words smart, bright, brilliant, and sharp all describe mental acuity but with different connotations. Bright can imply quick comprehension, brilliant suggests exceptional intelligence, and sharp might refer to keen perception. With happy, synonyms such as content, joyful, mirthful, and upbeat help us express different levels and types of happiness. Content and joyful are generally positive, mirthful adds a playful tone, and upbeat conveys enthusiasm. Lastly, introverted includes shy, bashful, quiet, and withdrawn. These words describe different facets of introversion. Shy and bashful relate to social hesitation. Quiet emphasizes a subdued nature, and withdrawn suggests a tendency to distance oneself. Overall, understanding these grouped synonyms allows us to choose our words more intentionally, making our communication clearer and more aligned with the nuances of each situation. Now, let's look at some additional synonym pairs that can enrich our vocabulary and help us express ideas more precisely. For example, silence and quiet both refer to a lack of noise, but we might choose one over the other depending on the context. Similarly, huge and gigantic both describe something very large, with gigantic often emphasizing a more extreme size. Moving on, teach and instruct are synonyms that relate to the act of providing knowledge or skills, but instruct can sound a bit more formal or official. When we talk about feelings, thrilled and excited both express happiness or enthusiasm, but thrilled often implies a more intense emotion. Some pairs, like ridiculous and absurd, both describe something that is unreasonable or hard to believe, often with a humorous or critical tone. Then we have small and tiny, which both denote something of limited size, with tiny emphasizing even smaller. We also see ocean and sea, which are often used interchangeably, but ocean typically refers to larger bodies of salt water. Moving on, war and battle both involve conflict, but war usually refers to a prolonged, large-scale conflict, while battle might be a specific engagement within a war. Next, offend and insult both relate to hurting someone's feelings, with insult often being a more direct or intentional act. Fall and autumn are synonyms for the season, though fall is more common in American English, while autumn is used more in British English. Offbeat and unconventional both describe something not typical or mainstream, often suggesting uniqueness. Melancholy and sad are synonyms for feeling down or gloomy, but melancholy can have a more poetic or lasting connotation. Then strange and odd both describe something unusual, and skilled and talented highlight a person's ability or expertise. The words often and frequently are adverbs that mean the same thing, happening many times. Moving to actions, help and aid are both about assisting others, with aid sometimes implying a more formal or organized effort. Lastly, these pairs help us see how different words can be used to add nuance and variety to our language, which is essential for effective communication in any context. Let's take a closer look at some colorful slang terms for being drunk. The American Slang Dictionary actually lists over 400 synonyms for this state. Today, I'll just highlight a few to give you a sense of the variety and creativity involved. You might hear people say someone is blind, blitzed, or bombed, all informal ways of describing intoxication. Other common terms include buzzed or high, which are quite popular in casual conversations. There are also more vivid expressions like legless, loaded, or looted, which emphasize a more extreme level of inebriation. Then there are terms like merry, messed up, or even more playful ones like nymptopsical, which add a humorous twist. Some phrases like off the wagon refer to someone who has recently started drinking again after quitting. More colorful options include pickled, plastered, or ripped, each painting a slightly different picture of the intoxicated state. You'll also hear terms like sloshed, smashed, or wrecked, all of which suggest someone is heavily intoxicated. Interestingly, some of these expressions, like 3 sheets to the wind, come from nautical origins, adding a historical flavor. The key takeaway here is that English is rich with slang terms for being drunk, and they vary from mild to extreme. These colorful synonyms help us understand not just language, but also cultural attitudes toward alcohol consumption. And as we explore language and slang, it's important to recognize how these expressions reflect social behaviors and attitudes, tying back to our overall theme of language as a mirror of society. Now, let's take a look at the concept of antonyms. Antonyms are words that have opposite meanings. For example, hot and cold, or happy and sad. Understanding antonyms is really important because it helps us grasp the full spectrum of a language. It also enhances our vocabulary by showing us how words relate to each other through their opposites. When we learn antonyms, we become better at expressing contrast and comparison, which makes our communication clearer and more precise. Remember, recognizing antonyms can also improve our reading comprehension and writing skills. So, in essence, antonyms are a key part of mastering language because they broaden our understanding of word relationships and meaning. Let's take a closer look at the definition of antonyms. An antonym is simply a word that has the opposite meaning of another word. For example, the word fast is an antonym of slow. This means that these two words express opposite ideas or qualities. Recognizing antonyms is important because it helps us understand the full range of meanings and how words relate to each other. As we continue with our theme of expanding vocabulary, understanding antonyms will allow us to communicate more precisely and effectively. Remember, identifying antonyms can also enhance our reading comprehension and make our language more dynamic. Now, let's talk about categories of antonyms, starting with graded antonyms. Graded antonyms are interesting because they deal with the levels or degrees of meaning behind the words. For example, if something is not good, it might still not be bad either. Instead, it could be somewhere in between, like fair or okay. This shows us that not all antonyms are simply opposites, some exist on a spectrum. Recognizing these helps us understand language more deeply, especially when we're trying to express nuances or subtle differences in meaning. So, graded antonyms remind us that language often isn't just black and white, they can be more like shades of gray. This concept ties back to our overall theme of understanding how words relate to each other in meaningful ways. Let's take a closer look at graded antonyms. These are pairs of words that are opposite in meaning but exist on a spectrum or gradient. For example, think of fat and skinny. These are opposites, but there are many shades in between. The same goes for last and first, or wide and narrow. These pairs help us understand degrees or levels, rather than just binary opposites. Other examples include young and old, dangerous and safe, foolish and wise, and smart and dumb. Notice how some of these words describe qualities that can vary in intensity or degree. For instance, something can be somewhat dangerous or very dangerous, which is where graded antonyms come into play. We also have pairs like abundant and scarce, clever and foolish, best and worst, and risky and safe. These highlight differences not just in quality but also in quantity or level of risk. Moving further, you see simple and challenging, happy and sad, fast and slow, joy and grief, again, showing varying degrees of these emotions or states. Other pairs include early and late, bad and good, soft and hard and soft. Notice how some words are direct opposites, but they can also be nuanced depending on context. For example, something might be soft but not necessarily hard, or warm and cool, dark and light, which describe different conditions or environments. We also have pairs like empty and full, pretty and ugly, worried and calm. These demonstrate how feelings or states can also exist on a spectrum. Recognizing graded antonyms is important because it helps us communicate more precisely, especially when describing things that aren't just black and white, but exist in a continuum. So, in our overall understanding of language, graded antonyms enrich our vocabulary and allow us to express subtle differences. They remind us that many concepts are not just opposites, but can vary in degree, which is a key point in mastering descriptive language. Let's take a look at the categories of antonyms, starting with complementary antonyms. These are pairs where there's no middle ground, it's either one or the other. For example, man and woman, day and night, push and pull. There's no in-between state, it's a clear either-or situation. Another way to think about this is with pairs like absent and present, which are mutually exclusive. Now, moving on to relational antonyms. These are a bit different because they often depend on a relationship between two concepts. They're sometimes considered a subcategory of complementary antonyms. What makes them unique is that both terms in the pair must exist to establish the relationship. For example, dead and alive are opposites, but only in relation to each other. Similarly, exit and entrance are connected, as are former and latter, or off and on. In pairs like sink or float, or pass and fail, the existence of one implies the potential for the other, emphasizing that relationship. Understanding these distinctions helps us see how antonyms function in language, especially when we're trying to express precise or contrasting ideas clearly. Now, let's take a closer look at relational antonyms. These are pairs of words where the meaning of one is directly related to the other, often representing roles or functions in relation to each other. For example, husband and wife are connected through a marital relationship, just as predator and prey are linked through a predator-prey dynamic in nature. Other examples include teach and learn, where one teaches and the other learns, highlighting a relationship of instruction and acquisition of knowledge. Similarly, doctor and patient demonstrate a professional and service relationship, and above and below show positional opposites that are related through spatial orientation. We also see borrow and lend, which are opposite actions involving the transfer of objects, and instructor and pupil, emphasizing a teaching and learning relationship. Buy and sell describe commercial exchanges, while come and go depict movement and transition. Lastly, give and receive showcase a reciprocal relationship, and servant and master reflect a relationship of authority and service. All these examples illustrate how relational antonyms are interconnected through specific roles or functions, and understanding these helps us grasp deeper concepts of how language reflects relationships and interactions in real life. This is a key part of the overall theme of understanding how words relate to each other in meaningful ways. Ahora vamos a repasar las instrucciones para la práctica de antónimos. En esta actividad, lirás las oraciones y deberás seleccionar la mejor respuesta que sea el antónimo correcto. Por ejemplo, en la primera oración, hoy es un día warm, la opción correcta sería cool, que significa fresco o frío, el antónimo de cálido. Seguiremos con más ejemplos. En la segunda oración, su jardín es muy large, la respuesta correcta es small, que significa pequeño, el antónimo de grand. Es importante entender que buscamos palabras con significados opuestos. En la tercera oración, él es un hombre strong, el antónimo sería weak, que significa débil. También hay options como huge o sturdy, pero la opción más precisa en este contexto es weak. Luego, en la cuarta oración, abre la puerta, por favor. El enfoque está en el concepto de cercanía o distancia, así que la respuesta correcta sería close. En la quinta, ¿cómo se define la por? La respuesta correcta sería wealthy, que significa rico, y que es el antónimo de pobre. Recuerda que la clave está en identificar las palabras que expresan ideas opuestas. En la sexta oración, ¿cómo vas a unite estas connections? La respuesta correcta es separate, que significa separar, siendo el antónimo de unir o juntar. Luego, en la séptima, vamos a hablar con nuestros enemigos. El antónimo sería friends, amigos, que representa relaciones opuestas. En la octava oración, en el juicio, el juez declaró a esta persona guilty. El antónimo correcto es innocent, innocent. Es fundamental entender estos conceptos para ampliar nuestro vocabulario y comprensión. Seguimos con la novena oración. Él está happy de estar aquí. Y el antónimo sería unhappy, que significa infeliz. Luego, en la décima oración, Mr. Brown siempre hace tests easy. La opción correcta es hard, que significa difícil, el antónimo de fácil. En la onceva, las organizaciones internacionales estarán en una forma temporaria en el país. El antónimo apropiado es permanent, permanent. En la doceava, mi madre vive en Guanacaste. En este caso, la opción que refleja un concepto opuesto no aparece claramente en las options. Pero lo importante es entender que aquí se trabaja con relaciones familiares y de lugar. Recuerda que esta práctica te ayuda a fortalecer tu vocabulario y tu comprensión del significado opuesto de las palabras, lo cual es esencial para mejorar tu comunicación en inglés. Gracias por tu atención y sigue practicando con entusiasmo.